Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Emilia Pérez. This is a very bad movie. There's really no way to get around that this is not good. I think it fails on so many levels. I'm a little curious on what it was intending to be, other than a big mess, and hoping that mess came out to be something that says something about I actually don't know. This is possibly one of the biggest artistic failures I've ever seen, and I think a lot of that is that this film is so inauthentic. It's almost authentic in how it's like total bullshit, but also it doesn't really even like the movie that it is, which is weird. It's not done in a way that's like saying something. It almost feels like this director, Jacques Odland or something, or whatever. I don't really want to say his name correctly. I think I saw The Beat My Heart Skipped, which I remember being good, but which he directed, which is super weird to think he did this also. But it's really artistically very negative and very shallow, and I kind of question why cover the subjects he's covering and what his ultimate purpose was, other through a very dismissive lens, which sort of goes against what he's trying to say, and he's not doing it in a way that's like, this isn't satire, this isn't funny, it doesn't really work as a musical, but also clearly doesn't like musicals, so I'm a little lost on like what you're trying to achieve. Like, that's the thing about this whole movie. It's like none of it the script basically just shit happens to these people randomly, and then the movie's like over, which I like that part, but it just is such an artistic, technical, like, it's such a mess across the board that I'm really confused how anyone could have taste this bad to think this is good. It feels like you couldn't come up with anything else to say about it, and you go, that was good, because you just don't want to deal with it. I don't know. Emilia Pérez is about a drug kingpin who then has sex reassignment surgery. You see that she is transitioning. She hires Zoe Saldana to be her sort of lawyer to help her stop being a drug kingpin and become a woman. And she does finds the best people, all that. She disappears for 10 years after that and leaves her wife, played by Selena Gomez, and her two kids who she's gone for a decade. She comes back fully transitioned, pretends to be her own sister, or her kid's aunt, moves them into a mansion somehow. I'm not exactly sure how they convince them of that, but sure. And then they're there, and then she starts like a way to find people who are murdered in the drug kingpin thing, which you'd think, and I thought after, wouldn't this movie be interesting? Which that's a big leap. Like, wouldn't it be interesting if she set up this whole charity to find people who are lost and who lost their loved ones, and she was just like, oh yeah, you should like go to this, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, but we should go to this like field here, there might be somebody there, I don't know, I just what I heard from a buddy, and then, like, that would have been like underhanded and funny, and like sort of like what I liked about like the main character in Dune 2, it's like you very much know he's not on their side and stuff. I thought that would have been entertaining. They don't do that. They try to play it like she's trying to help people in the drug war she was very much a part of, but whatever. And then other stuff happens, and eventually it ends and stuff. The whole time I was like, I wish there was like a thing that brought all these characters and storylines together, like they had a theme or a plot, sorta, or like whatever. I don't know. The thing that bugs me about this movie, also one of the things, and like I saw Joker Folly Adieu. I didn't make a review, I'm sorry, but like both this and that they're like anti-musical musicals, but not in like a cool like artistic way where they're like being weird and stuff. It's honestly like someone getting really upset that we have musicals again, but like there aren't really a lot of musicals. Like, if you really think about it, it's like Wicked, and like, every once award season we get like one or two that a studio really believes in, and you're like, oh, this is neat, cool, we get a musical, and then it like goes away, and we don't get another one for maybe a couple years or something like that. We get a big one. Sometimes we get a tick tick boom. Sometimes we get a this, we get a that. But it's just like a constant thing where you're like, why do you guys hate musicals so much? And they like shoot both the Joker 2 and this, shoot them like they don't want, they refuse to shoot it correctly. But like the thing is, like musicals, much like John Wick movies or action movies, if you show the full body of someone dancing and singing like they do in Wicked, frankly, and in John Wick movies, it's like thrilling and it's exciting, and that's like what people like about them. There's a reason Disney musicals, by the way, don't do a ton of cutting all the time, because it sucks. You can't relate to them as much. That's a really raw experience. I'm assuming killing people and doing headshots in the club and stuff is also that, so that's probably why they shoot that way too. And I think the same thing with these. It's like not a style anyone likes. Like, I think there's certain films that sort of get away with it that are musicals, like Moulin Rouge or Chicago, where they do have a little more cutting. But like both of those had a theory behind it. There was a reason they did those things. And Emilia Pérez and Joker 2 are just like, how about fuck you that you think musicals are interesting? And what if we just, don't care? And you're like, why would I want to watch that? Like, what is the perspective here? It's not like they're saying like, oh, musicals are fake while doing a musical. That would be a perspective. Both times it's like, it's an artistic thing. And like, I don't really get that. I think a lot of this movie is like, you're supposed to, if you look at most movies that have a good script, there's a cause and effect to things. This character did this, so then this happened, and then therefore this happened. There's like, sometimes that happens, but other times they're like, and then this person was kidnapped, or this person has a girlfriend. What's going on with that? No, it doesn't really come back, but it's there. It happened. Cool. And like, it just has stuff happen, and it doesn't really understand why. There's no real point to it. I mean, this was made by a French director about Mexico. They refused to shoot in Mexico. Several of the actors don't actually speak Spanish, so they had to teach them Spanish. I don't understand why you cast Americans in this, or like major movie star people, when this is the result. It seemed odd to me. Like, I just don't understand like what the purpose of that is at this point. I mean, it's also like, you look at a film like Sicario that talks about like drug trafficking and stuff like that. At least the first one, that's obviously the world of drug trafficking, so it's going to show you a lot of that stuff. It's sort of like they're obviously going to areas where that is very prevalent. That's like part of the whole movie thing. It's like you grow up in a city where they have an area where that stuff goes on. When you go to that area, shock of all shocks, that's what's going on there. And Emilia Pérez is just like, I don't know, all Mexican, it's all like that. And it has no real perspective to it. It's just like, I understand those things are pretty crazy over there, but it's not everything. And it pretty much portrays it that way. It just has such a negative thing. And I feel bad for Carla Sofia Gasson, not too much because I read her tweets, but I do feel like it would be nice to have like the first trans actress who's like nominated for an Oscar in like a better movie or something. But it also feels like she is very much, I feel like she tries to sometimes make something out of it, but there's no real, who is this character? Like, what is this character's desire ultimately? Like, to be a good person and stuff? Often she feels like a superhero, which really sucks because there was a trans superhero movie this year made by a trans filmmaker. It was called The People's Joker. It's a far more interesting story how that got to the big screen than like this movie, and it's really disappointing. I didn't think People's Joker would get any Oscar nominations or anything. I didn't think I Saw the TV Globe would either, but this is a major, like, this is a year for trans filmmaking. People are already going to write about how that this was one of the big things this year, well before like this really hit America. And it's disappointing that this ends up getting all the accolades and all the attention when it's like not made by a trans filmmaker, when it's, I don't think, a good example of the trans spirit. I guess I can't really speak on that, but it very much like was not really getting into those issues. It's not really getting into, really has much to say about gender. Like, it would have been interesting to see this drug kingpin fully realize these things, and like, I don't know, it really just feels like a bunch of crap happens and then it ends, and like they don't really, it like felt like they were like so committed to this bad script and this bad story, nobody thought about like what they were saying, and it majorly makes me question this director and everyone involved in this. I did sort of like Zoe Saldana, but I do often think the thing with Zoe Saldana is I so rarely see her not be green or blue, that when I see her not, like if I see her actually have her actual skin color instead of green or blue, not being gross or anything, but like in all, like when I did review Drumline a year ago or something, and when I reviewed that I was like, oh my god, I forgot that's what she looks like almost. She's in some of the biggest movies of all time, but we never see her, you know what I mean? And like I do think part of the problem with her on screen, it's not really a problem, I guess, is that like you at first want to give her credit for just like not having CG or makeup on to that degree. I think some of it is that I did think she was probably the best thing in this movie, but like that weird interpretive dance scene, like she went for it. It is like not good. It's like feels very like unhinged in a very negative way, and like it's also like a lot of the musical numbers, she's like all these people are just involved, and I'm like, okay, are you gonna like, or is this like going somewhere? Is she gonna like reject working for the drug kingpin? Is she gonna point this out to someone? Is this gonna change the movie? No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. She has objections to it. She has problems with it. Does she do anything? Not at all. Like a lot of wasted moments, a lot of bad screenwriting. If there's ever a film that like wastes a screenplay economy, it is this movie. I mean, honestly, I almost feel a little embarrassed to make this comparison because of the controversies it's had around it and how horrible it is. But like, I think Green Book was a better made movie than this, and sort of actually maybe understood what it was doing. And I don't even know what is going on here. I hear a lot of people kind of get into like almost close to conservative talking points saying this like virtue signaling and something like that. I sort of semi agree to the fact that I think it is like people who feel like this film is maybe saying something about somebody's experience. I'm not sure whose experience. Do they think it's like a trans thing? I don't. They think it's like talking about like, oh, it's an unconventional musical or something like that. It feels to me like someone, you know, there are certain people who every year there's the Oscars and there's a best foreign film or something like that. They'll just see the big foreign film. And like, that's totally cool if you do that. But there are certain people who take that on and make it like, you know, I saw this and I'm smarter and stuff like that. And they probably don't really get the movie. And like this is that. Like someone is like, you know what I saw? Emilia Pérez. And this just feels like taking advantage of these things, like, you know, the Cannes and the Oscars, and like these are things like people look back on and watch everyone that won and was nominated, and like that this like really bad example of this year is involved in this is really unfortunate. And I think like, you know, I don't take like this film deserved kind of thing very seriously, but if we're going to look at what we're doing in terms of, you know, film and recommendations and like this whole thing that we do with reviews and all this stuff, and we're pushing this movie, I think we have to really re-look at absolutely everything that's been going on to lead to this happening. Because this feels almost like when Driving Miss Daisy got nominated and won, and Do the Right Thing wasn't nominated. It feels like so many times these kind of, I mean, that's like, to me, is still one of the biggest Oscar things, but it also shows to me like people who are like so against actually dealing with the actual issues in front of them. They're actually part of the filmmaking scene and movies at the time, rather than take like this weird easy out, which like in the end, like what point did you even make? And like Emilia Pérez doesn't have a perspective really. Its perspective is fuck you. And its perspective on musicals is fuck you. It's just a whole bunch of like, we refuse to do anything responsible or anything filmmaking wise that works in a cohesive narrative. It doesn't work as a narrative. It doesn't work as a story. It's so bad. Like it is really remarkable. Like I had a hard time getting through it, and it's really long too. It is like, man, there's no way this movie can't be the worst, to be totally honest. This is like, it is really defiant in like being horrible. Like it almost reminds me of Pink Flamingos, and that tries to like fuck with you and constantly go like, is this gross? Is this gross? That did that, but in terms of like quality of the overall movie, like why have Selena Gomez in this? I don't understand. Like, I think she's all right on Only Murders in the Building, but if we're being real, she's being propped up by much more talented actors, and this is very much a big problem with her in this movie. I'm not a huge fan of her as an actress. She seems like a nice person. I don't know, but like, I feel like she often doesn't have the personality, and like, this is like a mess of like her like overdoing it, and like the dance, I don't understand. And then she suddenly has a boyfriend. Why do we have that here? This is an outright disaster artistically, creatively. It is like nobody checked the rough draft or something. Like, it feels like people believing that this will be important, which actually thinking about why it is important. Why is this movie? Why have it? Like, what's the point of it overall? Does it do anything for culture? Does it do anything for anyone? Even anyone involved? Maybe Zoe Saldana, because maybe we'll see her in other things. I hope this works out for her. Everybody else, I don't know. I don't know what you all were thinking with this one. I really think it is just another excuse for, just what we do. What we always do is we take the easy out when we could pretty clearly talk about an interesting filmmaking scene that is probably going to have influences for a very long time. And we've already seen influenced and memed and talked about forever. This movie will go away with the Oscars and will go down as an embarrassment because it is embarrassing that I actually watched it. I don't really want to talk about it with anyone. It's not a funny, bad movie. It's just not good. It is not a good example of the international film scene or anything like that. It is, in fact, if this is what people are liking, I don't think this speaks highly to your intelligence of genre or like, giving a shit about other people, because it doesn't give a shit about other people. Like, that is just not something this movie does. It makes broad generalizations. It doesn't care about musicals while being a musical. I don't think it cares about trans people. I don't actually think it cares about anyone other than the people making it, thinking they're doing something good for some reason. I don't get what this is, and I don't want it. Like, this is an outright failure on so many levels that if everyone walks away with us smiling and thinking they did a good job, I think morally and creatively, they really need to look deep into themselves and understand, like, what the hell have they done? Because I think this is one of the more worthless things I've seen being propped up into being something eternal. And I think people will look back and look at, maybe more of the empty parts of our culture rather than think of, how life is inspiring and inspirational, everything. I've noticed a lot of the positive reviews say a lot of big quotes and stuff. Most of the negative reviews do as well, and I hope I didn't do that, because I really wanted to piece through this. But it's honestly hard, because you piece through it, none of the pieces fit. It's like you threw a puzzle on the ground or something, and then it wound in throw up, and I don't know what we have here, but let's just throw it out and pretend it didn't happen. I think this was really worthless, and if you really cared about anyone who was involved and anyone you were talking about, you would not have made this movie. It is very clear. The director looks down on everyone involved in this, and if you're doing that and there isn't an overall point or perspective even, I think, as a filmmaker, he probably should reevaluate his morals and really think about what he is in fact saying and who he is a person making something that is honestly one of the ugliest things I've seen creatively, probably in a very long time. So if you've seen Emilia Pérez and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.